Each year, on this second Sunday of Advent, we hear about John the Baptizer, fulfilling this prophecy from Isaiah. Mark's version says it this way: as it is written in the prophet Isaiah, "See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way. The voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make his paths straight." Then, as if on cue, Mark tells us that John the Baptizer appeared in the wilderness. And Matthew and Luke tell the story almost exactly the same way, like they were copying each other. Actually, they were copying each other, but that's a different sermon for a different time. And yet, if we take a careful reading of the words of the prophet Isaiah, those words vary just a bit. It's all about the placement of the colon. Let me illustrate. In Isaiah's words, it says, "A voice cries out, colon, in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God." Not a voice cries out in the wilderness, quote, "Prepare the way of the Lord." But in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. You see, Isaiah was talking to the people of Israel who were in the wilderness. For 39 chapters preceding today's text, there were judgments by the prophet Isaiah on a people who had turned their back on God. And now, this 40th chapter, Isaiah is turning the page. Isaiah is saying, "Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her as she has served her turn." In those 39 preceding chapters, Isaiah has foretold the Messiah that is coming. And while it is a time for comforting those who have now returned to God, it is still not a time of rest. We can't get stuck, and they couldn't get stuck in feeling the comfort of God. They were instructed to prepare the way for the Lord. And preparing happens in the wilderness. Make straight the path in the desert. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain should be brought down. Uneven ground, we certainly have uneven ground, I can attest to it, shall become level, and rough places shall be made as a plain. I think this leveling of things, I can see the image of it, that it clears a straight path to God, a straight path with no obstacles blocking our view, no corners that we have to turn. We can stay laser focused on who and how God would have us be if we can clear all of those obstacles that are in front of us. And when they did that, and when we do that, we are in a position to respond to what God is calling us to. Advent is that time of preparation, preparing the way, and that preparing happens in the wilderness. Isaiah's wilderness isn't desolate. God is there. There are flowers, there is grass. It's not desolate. It bears fruit. John's wilderness, as he proclaims and baptizes, isn't the end, but it's simply the beginning. Wilderness is an invitation for transformation. In today's gospel, we see people from the Judean countryside and from Jerusalem going out into the wilderness. They're looking for something. They're seeking something that they can't find in their current lives. As I thought about this, I thought about 48 years ago. There were a group of people much like them who were seeking something different, and they dared to seek it in the wilderness that is right here. The wilderness that didn't have a building on it when this worshiping community began. This was a wilderness in which they sought something different among the trees and the sandy earth. They were searching for something else, seeking how they might respond to God's call. A call to be something new. Not to do something new necessarily, but to be something new, something unexpected. Unexpected, like finding John covered with camel's hair, wearing a leather belt, and eating locusts and wild honey. That kind of unexpected. That's the wilderness that the first founders of Church of the Servant were going for. And then when it came time to build the sanctuary that isn't safe for us to be inside right now, they did it in an unexpected way. No fixed pews where sitting in one causes you to simply see the back of somebody else's head. No fixed pulpits, no designated spot for the altar. No, this was an unexpected space for worship. Perhaps at first a bit disorienting. I can speak for myself, it could be. But yet, it's wilderness-like. Disorienting in a wilderness-like way. And the purpose was to create a place where we as a worshiping community could simply be together. And we could see each other, not the backs of each other's heads, but see each other in the round. A place where we could welcome others in, like John welcomed those into his space in the wilderness. But also a place that prepares the way for Jesus' message of love to be spread while we're in our space together, but more importantly, when we go back out of the wilderness. And over these 48 years, others have come too. They too, we too, come seeking something else, something unexpected. And in that seeking, we are responding to God's call. COVID-19 has caused us to return to this beginning ground, this ground outside of buildings, this ground under trees. My favorite installments in the church register are the baptisms that say, happened on the church grounds. There was no other place for them to happen. COVID-19 has in some ways thrust us all into the wilderness. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our response? Individually and collectively, will we cling tightly to what has become familiar? Or might we listen for the voice of the one crying out, prepare the way, because God's ready to do something. And that something, if I know Church of the Servant, will be unexpected. Amen.